Thank you for tuning in to the Black Money Tree Podcast, hosted by entrepreneur, investor, and philanthropist Jerome D. Love. We are committed to teaching you how to build wealth so that you can build your community. At the Black Money Tree, our goal is to empower wealth creation and create economic self-sufficiency in order to empower generations to come. Society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never enjoy. Season is powered by Wells Fargo Bank. Welcome to the Black Money Tree Podcast.
Welcome back to the Black Money Tree Podcast. I'm your host, Jerome D. Love, and I'm also the CEO and founder of the Texas Black Expo. With the Black Money Tree, as well as the Texas Black Expo, we are all about helping to create wealth within the Black community, and our primary methodology for it, entrepreneurship and real estate. So I'm really excited about this movement. I want all of you guys to join me in May of 2024 in Houston for our next Texas Black Expo Summer Celebration. Now, today we have a phenomenal entrepreneur here. She is doing some amazing things, particularly in the area of franchising. So we're going to hear a little bit about her story, how she's come up, and the power of franchising. So I'd like to welcome to the Black Money Tree Podcast, Miss Tarji Carter. Tarji, welcome to the Black Money Tree Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jerome. This is an honor.
Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you're here with us. Now, I'm going to allow you to formally introduce yourself and your company. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your company, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so Tarji Carter, I've worked in the franchise sales and development space for the past 15 plus years. Worked for some of the world's most delicious brands. You name it, I've pretty much worked for them. But what I noticed is that throughout my career, there was a huge disparity from a diversity standpoint at every level throughout franchising. And so I decided that I was going to take everything that I've learned in that time, or from that time in franchise sales and development with other companies, and form my own company that provides education, opportunities, and resources to the Black community as it relates to franchise ownership.
So let's talk about some of the companies that you have worked with. Talk a little bit about some of the companies that you have worked with and currently work with.
Yeah, so I started my career selling franchises for Carvel ice cream. I don't know if you remember them, but they've been around for quite some time. Cinnabon. So within 8 months, I was promoted to director over Cinnabon and Carvel for the entire country. Went on to sell franchises for Dunkin Donuts, Baskin Robbins, Wingstop, Edible Arrangements, Bojangles, and currently I work very closely with Fuddruckers Corporation, Pet in Mind, which is a pet services franchise, as well as Smoothie King.
So talk a little bit about how you got into franchising. Where'd you go to school? I mean, what kind of degree did you study? Like, what was so attractive about franchising?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I didn't go to college.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my path was very different. I started my career as a travel agent. I moved into the hotel and hospitality space, and that's where I met the then president of Cinnabon Corporation. And he just really enjoyed working with me collectively on a number of projects. And then brought me on as a sales manager and took a chance on me. And from that point on, it's been a great experience. I've learned a lot. And what I learned was that as a child, I was never exposed to the world of franchising, right? The information didn't reach the community where I grew up. And so knowing that about myself and so many others that asked me so many questions as it relates to how you can get into franchising, I knew that starting the franchise player was the best next step for my career.
So you kind of touched on it. Everybody wants to own a franchise. Everybody wants to own a McDonald's. What is it? What are some, first off, I guess a couple things. I'm new. I want to start in business. I want to be a franchise. What are some of I'm going to say the hot franchises? Because from my understanding, the McDonald's is like a unicorn right now. Some of the bigger brands that most people want to get in, they are kind of like unicorns. They are pretty expensive
Hmm.
for your starting investor. So for your starting investor wanting to go into business, wanting to go into franchising, what are some of the hot brands out there, if that's the proper way of putting it, the franchises that are available,
Yeah.
affordable, and offering the ROI that you would be looking for?
Well, I used to look at it from that lens, and then the pandemic struck, and we learned very quickly that there were certain elements that a concept needed in order to be successful. Right? There needed to be an e-commerce element, curbside delivery needed to be available if you needed to implement that, um, and a drive-through as well as delivery. So those are the brands that were able to maintain and flourish throughout the pandemic. Some of the others that didn't have any one of those elements struggled pretty bad, and they're still working to recover. For someone looking to get into franchising, I always say start small. Yes, aspire to own a larger brand at some point, but start small. Start with, if you're looking to get into restaurant franchising, start with something that has a less complex menu, right? So I always talk about snack brands, cookies, ice cream, donuts, things like that, that can help you get into a system and understand how a franchise system works, right? Because that's the key to it. Are you coachable, right? Because franchising isn't for everybody. Not everybody is coachable. Not everybody wants to follow a system. Some people are true entrepreneurs and want to do things their own way. They want to have Jerome's chicken or Tarji's donuts, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I believe franchising is one of the best ways, the most efficient ways to get into business for yourself, but not necessarily by yourself.
So break that down. Why do you feel so strongly about that? And I will tell you my story. I started my first business when I was 19.
Hmm.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was just aggressive, and I knew I didn't want to work for anyone else. But looking at knowing what I know now,
Hmm.
I feel like franchising should have been something that I strongly considered. And so
Absolutely.
why do you suggest franchising, and why do you think so many people that look like me and you aren't into franchising?
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, right? There's the fact that as a people, we want to own something, right? We
Mm.
want to make sure that we own something, we can put our name on it and create a legacy. And you can still do that through franchising. But I believe franchising is one of the most efficient ways to get into business because you are learning from folks who've already made the mistakes, right? They've made the costly mistakes. So now you have the benefit of coming in and benefiting from the lessons. So they provide you with a blueprint. If you follow that blueprint and not deviate, you have what you need to be successful, right? So it's a business. Number one, you need to understand the franchise organization is not responsible for your success. They're responsible for what's included in that disclosure document that they say they will provide to you as a franchisor. Once you open your doors, it's really up to you to ensure that you're ingrained in the community that you serve or communities that you serve. And by that, I mean getting out into the neighborhood, showing the community that you care, hiring with care, right? Bringing in folks that really care about the community and your business. And so that's why I believe, you can get into this business and then also have the support of the brand. So when you start your own organization, your own company or business, you're wearing all the hats. You're doing marketing, real estate, construction, design. You're doing all of it. So when you buy into a franchise, what you're buying into is the support that you will receive. So once you sign your franchise agreement, you're signing the agreement, you pay your franchise fees, and you immediately start working with real estate department to find the location, if in fact you need a brick and mortar for this concept. Then there's construction and design support, training, marketing, and operations. And so, for one person to be able to provide all of that to a community of folks that want to buy into their concept, it's going to take a while to build that up. And so, what you can do is, say, for example, you want to own something larger and you want to convert your concept into a franchise, get into a small franchise and learn how a system is how it should operate, how it should be run, and what you need in order to provide from a support standpoint to those that invest in your concept.
So let's talk about the franchise player. The
Mhm.
franchise player is not a franchise, it's a business. So
It's a
you went
business.
from, I'm not sure where you were at before you started that, but you went from working for a company that does franchises to now starting your own company. What were some of the challenges that you experienced in starting your own business?
Really believing in myself, right? So, having worked in corporate America for so long, I was very accustomed to um, not having the support that I needed to be as successful as I knew I wanted to be. So, stepping out on my own, I had to really believe in what I was doing. I had to really know that there was a need for what I'm providing. And so, once I was able to prove that to myself, then I was able to really get comfortable with the fact that, okay, I'm here now and I have to do whatever I need to do to make sure that this thing is successful, and I'm living up to the commitments that I'm making to those that have this need to learn more about franchising and how it can be a huge um, it can be a huge way to create generational wealth in this community.
So I'm curious to know, you were in the franchise business, you advocate for franchising,
Mhm.
but you didn't go into franchising yourself. Is that in the future, or what? Talk to me a little bit about that. If you can't, if you can share a little bit on that.
Yeah, so interestingly, I'm working on my own restaurant franchise concept
Okay,
that I'll be selling. That's the retirement plan,
okay,
right? Everything that I've learned, all the brands that I've worked for, um, I know how to do this the right way. And so I
okay.
want to make sure the franchise player is going to be around for a very long time, even when I'm, beyond me, right? There's going to be, this is going to be around for a while. I've created this for the community because there's no one else that is providing this to our people. And so I pray and hope and plan that this will be around for quite some time. But the concept that I'm working on will also then give an opportunity to everyone, right? It's going to be franchising with integrity. So anyone that qualifies, meets the qualifications, is going to be able to buy into this franchise concept. Um, Whether you're black or white or in anything in between, um, there's going to be just a lot of transparency that I think is missing in today's environment. And so, no, I've not bought into a concept because I really believe at this time in my life, my time and effort is better used providing the support that I provide now, the education, the resources, the opportunities to so many, right? I talk to existing franchisees and they say all the time, I hear, well, where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? And I say, well, I was still learning. I was still becoming the franchise player. And
Yeah.
so I just think that my time at this particular moment is better used um, in what I'm doing today.
So I thought of two questions just hearing what you shared. You said no matter, regardless of race, you'll be able to assist others. It is, and I've heard stories of individuals that were saying they want to go into certain franchise and couldn't get in and things of that nature. Uh, do you feel as though racism is overtly present in the franchise game, or is it kind of more covert in that because of all the systems in our society and our world, we don't have the net worth and the income and just some of the things that are necessary to get in? But
Mhm.
is it overt racism, or is it just kind of like that covert because we don't have what it takes, because we kind of started behind that we can't get in the game? What would you say?
I would say it's a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
More so covert than anything.
Okay.
And you often hear, oh, well, we can't find qualified minority candidates, right? Or within the corporations, we can't find qualified individuals to fill this role. My response to that is you'll never find something that you're not looking for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No.
really that simple.
Yeah.
Because when we did the franchise game, you were there.
Yeah.
Some of the greatest minds in franchising were on that stage and in that room. And I'm talking folks with PhDs, you name it, right? And exceeding and excelling in their current position. So to me, it's if you're looking for it, you're going to find it. And
Yeah.
so and so to that point, I also work with corporations who are looking to diversify their franchisee pool that may not have the bandwidth who really have a desire to be more inclusive. So the franchise player also stands as a third party diversity um, partner, if you will,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you don't have the means to create a program or a division. You can tap into what we're doing over at the franchise player and have access to those candidates that you're looking
Yeah. Well, no, that's good. That's good. I commend you for the work you're doing.
for. Thank you.
So, lastly, I will ask the question. I already asked this, but I'm going to ask it in a different way. I asked you, starting out, what are some of the franchises we should be looking at? You kind of told me some of the characteristics, the online, the drive-through,
Mhm.
this, that, and the other. But I'm a
Yeah.
new entrepreneur. I'm starting out. I have $10,000. Let's say 15, 10 to $20,000. I want to be in the franchise business. What are some
Mhm.
of the options that are out there? Like, and I'm really looking for more names. Like, it not, if
Yeah,
you
I
can share.
know.
I don't know if that's crossing the line. Tell me, but
I wouldn't say it's crossing the line. It's just a matter of what the brands are looking for. And I know I'm going
okay,
back to characteristics. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the larger brands want you to make a large commitment. They want you to
okay,
say, you know what, we need you to commit to developing 3 or 5. Or we're looking for someone who already has multi-unit development experience. Meaning even if you some brands, even if you own 3 Dairy Queens, right? But you didn't develop them, you just acquired them, you bought them from someone else, they don't take you as seriously because you didn't go through that whole process of sourcing real estate, managing the construction project, building a team, right? You just kind of bought a business. So there's some brands that don't look at that. So I would say for someone just wanting to get started, I think Smoothie King is great. There's a company in McDonough, Georgia. It's another smoothie concept. It's called Smooth and Groove. They're doing really great things. Ben and Jerry's has an amazing racial equity program where they're waiving franchise fees and royalties for the first 3 years. And
is that
so
just
I
for
have a really,
minorities?
yeah. So I have a
Okay.
really good relationship with them, and they have this racial equity program in place that they're really putting their money where their mouth is. That's the best incentive, a minority incentive I've ever seen in my entire career.
So one of the things you said, you talked about developing from the whole concept. My thought process from the franchise,
Mhm.
they tell you what the amount is, the concept.
Mhm.
You say yeah, you give them the money, and
Mhm.
either you purchase an existing store or location,
Mhm.
and or they build it for you, and now you run it. But
Yeah.
it sounds like I guess it depends on which franchise you're dealing with. You have to really find the location, work with the contractors, find all of that is your responsibility as a franchisee.
Oh yeah. So there are some brands, they're at the point where they're doing what's called corporate development, right? So they'll find the land or build out the store, and they'll sell it. They'll sell it to you as a corporately developed project. So there's that part, but not most. A lot of brands that I work with are not at that point just yet, but there are some that are out there. When you sign a franchise agreement, you're buying the rights. Well, when you sign a store development agreement, you're buying the rights to a certain territory to develop however many stores you've committed to developing. Then they have the company has internal teams, real estate, construction, all of that. Now the real estate, the internal real estate person is there to guide you. However, you are responsible for finding your own real estate and negotiating your own lease. Now they'll be there to support you, and if you want to ask questions, they can be there to guide you along the path. But that's why it's important to have your own team. Someone on your team that understands sourcing real estate and negotiating leases, and so that you all can come together and make sure that you're finding the right location. Then you're responsible for hiring a general contractor, right? So the construction person internally will oversee the project to a degree, but it's really your GC and you that are building this out. So you'll be provided with a floor plan. You then give that to your architect, and then you have this blueprint of what the store should look like. So there are certain uh, guardrails within the organization to help you as you're going along, but ultimately you're the one that's building this out if in fact it's new development. there may be stores for sale, and it's up to you to do the due diligence to make sure that you are buying a viable business, right? So
So,
that's where you need to make sure that you have your team in place to ensure you're not signing your life away.
so if I am in business and I'm looking for an additional stream of revenue, how
Mhm.
do I go about making my business a franchise? And I know that's kind of broad because it probably depends on the type of business you have, whether it be real
Mhm.
estate, accounting, whether it be a restaurant or
Right.
whatever. What is your advice and thought processes there? Do you advise individuals who have their own business to possibly take what you learn, put it in a box, and sell it to someone else, and that's kind of an additional stream of revenue?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk to people about that all the time. I've worked with several clients who wanted to and wanted to take that step, right? Because it's pretty involved, and it's not super expensive, but there is a cost to doing it. But before you even get to the point of having to dish out any money to take your concept and convert it into a franchise, there's a lot of work on the front end. So you have to make sure you're keeping very good books, and you want to show a profit. Because what happens is the Federal Trade Commission requires every franchise to have what's called a franchise disclosure document, an FDD for short. In that FDD, there's a section called the Item 19, which is where any smart investor is going to go first. That shows pretty much what your average unit volumes could be, right? So, what am I going to make off of this? What's the ROI, right? So, the Item 19 is going to show you that. Now, if you're an organization that hasn't been keeping good books, or you've just been showing a loss every year, then that's not going to bode well for anyone who you want to buy into your system, because they're going to look at the Item 19 and not see anything worth investing in.
Yeah.
So keeping good books. And then secondly, making sure you write down every step of your process as if you were going to hand it to a third grader.
Yeah.
I walk in at 8 o'clock in the morning, I flip on the lights, right? Because that's going to be part of your operations manual. Those are the two things that people buy into when they're buying into a franchise. They want to know that it's making money, and they want to know they're buying into a system that works. So those are the two pieces of advice I give to anyone interested or thinking they're interested in converting their concept into a franchise.
No, that's great information, Tarji. I really appreciate your time today on the Black Money Tree podcast. Last question. So, if I'm a new business owner in general, franchise, non franchise,
Mhm.
what are those one or two things that you would advise that person that's starting a business, never done it before, or maybe they've just started, but what's the advice you give them to help them to be more successful?
I would say get your credit and your finances in order, right? It's all about having the resources to be able to leverage your business. And so, if you're strapped for cash, you're going to make bad decisions. You might
Yeah.
bring in some partners that are unsavory. You might just make some decisions that just don't bode well for you. So, the financial piece can be very stressful, right? Especially if you have a family that's relying on you to make good decisions. So before you get into business, just make sure that your credit is where it needs to be so that you can get business credit. And then also making sure you have a nest egg put aside for those miscellaneous situations that might occur.
Great advice, Tarji. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Black Money Tree podcast. I do want to give you a minute. What else is coming up? Where can we find you? Social media, all that good stuff. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit more about those that want to find out more about the franchise player and upcoming events.
All right. So we are hosting the second annual the franchise game in Dallas, Texas in August of 2024. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, the franchise player, or on Instagram, I am the franchise player. That's where you
Awesome.
can
Thank
find
you
me.
so much, Tarji, for joining us today. And thank you for all of you for tuning in to the Black Money Tree podcast. Make sure you follow us, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff everywhere you get your podcasts. And make sure you go to bearealestateinvestor.com if you're interested in learning more about growing your wealth in the real estate arena. But Tarji, thank you again. And thank you all for tuning
Thank
in to the
you.
Black Money Tree podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Black Money Tree Podcast. Don't forget to like and share this video. And if you want more content like this, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We'll see you next time.